variety is good for the soul. This is the road to PRS.
Impact.
There's a fundamental truth in the statement that in order to learn something new, you have to release the dogma of the old so you can see the forest for the trees. And that is completely true in the load development process for a PRS rifle. Letting go of the dogma of F-class allows me to do load development in an intelligent way for PRS. This is the first video in a multi-part series on how I do load development for this PRS rifle. This first video is going to be about setting standards and requirements. The next video will be the process of finding the right powder charge and seating depth, and the last video will be comparing the result of the load development process to a standard to see if it was really worth doing at all or not. In order to set standards and requirements for how your rifle has to shoot, you first have to do some research for your research and development program. Load development is R&D. In order to do that, you need to look at what you're trying to accomplish with the rifle. That started for me last July before I built the rifle, going to a PRS match and watching pros shoot, taking copious notes about target sizes and distances, and looking at how a match is won and what causes someone to lose. Well, it's pretty simple in PRS how you win a match. You miss less targets than anyone else, which means that identifying the causes of misses is a very good way to identify where you need to work in order to get the best outcomes for your shooting. Let's talk about some causes of misses that I saw during my visit. The first was position problems. An imperfect hold at the moment of firing results in a miss. The second was bad wind calls. Once again, an imperfect hold at the time of firing causes a miss. Number 3 was bad dope. If your ballistic solution doesn't work out because you haven't spent time to make sure that you have the right solutions, you're gonna miss. Fourth was kind of surprising for me, considering I was watching pros shoot, and that is shooting the wrong target. Number 5 was running out of time, because if you don't fire the shot, you missed the target. Notice I didn't say that anybody had a big shooting rifle. The shooters I was watching were mostly pros, although there were some rather new shooters involved there too. And they didn't seem to miss because their gun wasn't shooting tight enough. Just something to keep in mind. A couple of takeaways from that match was that the target sizes were much bigger than I expected, around 1.5 minutes of angle on average, or even bigger than that. And the ranges were shorter than I expected. The average target range was somewhere just shy of 600 yards, which once again was surprising to me, not knowing anything about PRS at the time. Supplement that with watching lots of videos on YouTube of people shooting PRS matches and taking notes of distances, target sizes, and shooting orders, and you start to find that the average target distance is around 600 or less, and the average target size is 1.5 minutes of angle or greater. Which means that in order to hit the vast majority of targets, you don't need a super tight shooting rifle. You need some position skills. Watching the finale of the AG Cup on Shooting USA last night, I noted that there were only 2 targets in that entire course of fire that were sub-minute of angle, and both of them were inside of 600 yards. So having a super tight shooting rifle is not absolutely necessary, although I did notice that the pros involved had pretty tight shooting rifles anyway. The question then becomes, in order to hit all of those targets and miss the least number possible, how tight does the rifle have to shoot again? Do you need that? Or would this be adequate? So what does that mean for our load development process? Well, it means that we can do a very short, not necessarily statistically significant process of finding a load, because if we miss the exact perfect tune by just a little bit, it doesn't matter that much. The rifle isn't likely to get huge, it's going to get a little bigger, which means that we're going to have a perfectly adequate rifle at all times. We don't have to chase it like we do in F-class. So my standard for this initial load development is going to be as follows. The velocity needs to fall somewhere above 2,900 feet a second. With a dasher, you're going to be between 29 and 3,000 for the top node anyway, so I'm going to be somewhere in there. I want to shoot a 105 or greater grain bullet, and it needs to group no worse than half minute of angle at 600 yards for 5 shots and do it repeatedly, 2 to 3 times in a row. That means we're going to be sub half minute of angle at 100 yards for obvious reasons, with no extensive vertical in it or horizontal spreading. Likewise, we're going to avoid extremely high ES and SD by properly assembling our ammunition. We're going to check it, but we're not going to do statistically significant sampling because that is a waste of barrel life in this case. And at the same time, we're not going to do 5-shot groups over and over again trying to find the best load because that's a waste of barrel life and time that you could be better spending on your position shooting. That's the standards for this particular load development process. Above 2,900, less than half a minute of angle, and repeats at 600 yards. It's not a very hard one to achieve, all things considered, with a high-quality rifle. So for the next video, we are going to do load development with N140 and 105-grain hybrid bullets to demonstrate the process. Is N140 the perfect powder for the dasher? Probably not. I'd bet that the Varget that everybody else uses is probably better. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of that. So we're going to use the N140 for this load development process. If you want to use Varget, that's on you. Until next time, think about your requirements before you start seeding primers so you don't waste components and barrel life unnecessarily chasing something that will never benefit you in your shooting. And I'll see you in the next video.